There we go. All right. Anybody want to hazard a guess as to where we might be up to?
Am I allowed to, or am I off the table?
You are definitely not allowed. Sorry. You are disqualified. People who pay attention don't get to answer.
All of the heroes.
Oh, shame.
Are you picking on her because she's my niece?
So you're saying it's worth it not to pay attention?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that because I don't think all the people who guess, a page ahead, a page behind, I wouldn't exactly call that good standing for them. So I would recommend paying attention, and that'll be good on both ends, Might even get it right. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. All right. Okay.
I'm guessing. I know.
What do you got?
We didn't finish quite
528.
528, yes, that is correct. Anyone else?
280.
280?
Maybe behind all your food start.
Just
There
before
are
that.
528 pages in this edition.
Correct. That is correct.
What'd she say?
She said there aren't 528 pages in her edition, and she is correct. And an excellent observation as well.
Give that woman a cookie.
Good job.
She has to come get it.
That's right. Okay. So where is that in the other? Anyone? 280? All right. Vihine on 280?
Maybe use the show must stop.
Yes. Yeah, that's on 280?
Yeah, that's great.
280. All right.
About 8 lines up or so.
280, about 8 lines up. Okay, here we go. All right, so what we've been discussing has been the value of Shema. We're talking about how the whole world is en route to reaching a state of perfection, and that everything that goes on is part of that process. And it is through that process that we will eventually be able to exist in a utopian world. In a world in which all is good and evil is subdued and is not able to manifest really in any way. And that is the end of the process. Now, that process, though, he's saying is brought about through the actions of men. It's by our doing the right thing and promoting the goodness that the Torah represents that this goodness is able to come down to the world. And as that process becomes stronger and stronger, we are able to see more and more of that goodness and less of the evil. Okay. Okay, but as we said, which he ended off with, the lack of doing these good things will bring about the opportunity for evil to manifest, and that's how we see the world, unfortunately, at times, being in a very dark and difficult place. Okay. Good? Okay, so Vihine. V'yos Yisrael mizchazkim b'chol yom al davar zeh. As Klal Yisrael strengthens itself with this matter, makablim malchusa yisbarach, and we accept the sovereignty of Hashem, u'moidim ba, b'libam u'b'pihem, and we acknowledge it both in our hearts and in our mouths. Hashem spreads throughout His world, and the powers of evil are subdued under the good. And then the bracha is able to exist and flow throughout the world forever. So this is the the end result, basically. So as we are strengthening ourselves in this concept of saying Shema, of accepting Hashem's sovereignty, of promoting this idea, both within and without, then we are going to bring out this greatness of Hashem to the world, first to ourselves and then to the world, and in doing so, we can bring down this goodness that is directly related to our acceptance of Hashem's kingship. Okay, we're good? Okay, so that's where we got to last week. And,
That was right.
oh, you said after that? Okay.
I said this one, yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, when we testify Hashem's oneness, which, as we've mentioned, that is when you say Shema, we are testifying about Hashem's unique oneness. Hashem will answer us relatively, meaning He will reciprocate. And Hashem becomes exalted in His oneness. And Hashem strengthens and adds to the world a rectification upon another rectification, which is all in line with the process of the true fulfillment of the correction of the world. And it's to this end that all of the different ways of Hashem's running the world are all leading to this point. All of it's building up steam and moving along this path towards the ultimate correction and perfection of the world. Mekayim Atzasai, and that is the fulfillment of Hashem's plan. Shehi, which is the Hamid Habariya al Tov Hashalem, to establish the world in the complete goodness as we have described. So, when we are saying Shema, and we are accepting Hashem as King, and we are testifying to this oneness of Hashem being intrinsic, being unique, being without any kind of, forget about equal, not even comparison, when we're able to testify that, meaning that we know it to be true, because you can only testify about something you know. You can't testify at something that you think. You can only testify something that you know. So if we're able to testify to this, and every time we say Shema, that's what we're doing, and we're telling ourselves, I know without a doubt, just like something that I've seen, I know that Hashem is one, Hashem's oneness is unique, Hashem's oneness is the source of all existence, and I am acknowledging that and accepting that. That is accomplishing the goal of creation. The goal of creation is to reach a point of perfection, and by saying Shema and knowing all of that and describing it in your head and testifying about it so that it's a knowledge to you, that is bringing the world a step closer to that ultimate perfection. Yes?
So women are allowed to be witnesses in this situation?
Women absolutely allowed to be witnesses in this situation. There are numerous situations in which women are allowed to be witnesses, and this is certainly one of them. Okay, is this concept clear? We understanding this? No? A little bit more. Okay, so we mentioned earlier that the goal of creation is to reach a state in which the whole world recognizes Hashem, and the world can then exist for a time in that state, and then continue to develop higher and higher within that, or that's kind of the starting point, develop higher and higher till we get to a point where spirituality just takes over, basically.
That's in a 1,000-year period?
At least, right. Yeah. So the way, or one of the ways, okay, let me put it this way. Really everything that happens is getting the world to that point. Everything that occurs, both good and bad, is all steps. It's all part of that process. Now, when we say Shema and we have in mind, we understand everything. Sorry. I'm responding to someone's question of if we're having a class. Waiting on you. Just kidding. Yes, we started without you. Sorry.
Were you a handful as a child?
I'm not going to answer that question. You can ask my mother when you see her next.
Well, just let me know when she's here because I'd love to know the answer to that question. When you was a child.
Some things don't change.
Where are you? In the right order?
I'm in the positive. I'm 5 out of 6.
Oh, okay.
That explains it all? That's how it works? That's it? Number 5? That explains it all? Yeah, okay. Yeah, uh-huh. Okay.
At that point, your parents are like,
I appreciate the vote of confidence in my parents. Anyway, yeah. All right, so when we are accepting all of this and we say Shema and we're testifying that we understand all of this and we accept Hashem as our king and his sovereignty is supreme, so we're proclaiming that. We're not just keeping that bottled up. We're proclaiming that. That, he's saying, is a powerful way to get the world going towards this goal. So every time we say this and we proclaim Hashem's oneness, then we're bringing the world a step closer. That's what we're doing. So there's...
Just by reinforcing that very fact. In other words, as long as you, every day, you think about and you say that Kosh Baruch Hu's oneness, so you don't really intrinsically know anything more day 1 than you do day 2.
Right. You don't necessarily know anything more that you said on day 2 than you did on day 1. That is true. But like you're saying, the fact that we're constantly reiterating it and reinforcing it and reaccepting it is this process. That is the goal. So the more we do that, the more the world will come to this place of goodness. Okay? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, as he says, the more we do this, the more Hashem responds in kind, and Hashem brings goodness. Hashem brings that goodness into the world because we are accepting Hashem as our king, and he is responding in kind by showing us his kingship. And that is the goodness that is brought down into the world. Okay. And that which you need to know to understand this. Who this is? That all of this was only said in the root of the world coming to its correction through the actions of men. And not on its own. Because it's already been established. The world has already been established in a way that this process, this path is set up. That all of the cycles, all the turns, all of the things that happen are all going to this perfection. And this is what Hashem has caused and causes in his goodness and his power. But it was Hashem's great wisdom that decreed that this should be accomplished through mankind. Because if it happens through mankind, then the people who bring that about will themselves become perfected. And then the perfection will be at its ultimate. The highest level of perfection can be accomplished when the people bring it about. Because then those people are the owners of their perfection. They've accomplished it. They've done it. They've owned it. That is the highest level of perfection. Because it's not like something came from the outside and caused perfection. The people themselves created the perfection. That's the highest level of perfection, because now there is a relationship between the perfection and the people. And when you have that relationship between the perfection and the people, it's not just something that's sitting on top of us that gets, placed upon us, but it's something that we develop and we accomplish and we earn. Then that perfection is intrinsically connected to us. And therefore that perfection is more perfect than a perfection that's simply placed upon us. And this is a concept we talked about way back in the beginning of the Sefer, where we said that the goal of creation wasn't to simply give goodness, but to give the ultimate in goodness. And the ultimate in goodness is when we are able to earn that goodness instead of simply have it given it to us for free. And the explanation for that, which again we learned about over there at length, is this concept that when you work at something and you develop it and you accomplish it, it's much more intrinsic and a part of who you are and who you become than if it simply gets put on you. If it gets put on you, it's not really part of who you are. But if you develop it yourself and you create it, then that is your own perfection. And that's the highest level that a person can achieve, and the world at large as well. V'nimtza, so what comes out from this is shezeh kol ikarim shel dvarim eila. This is the point. This is the goal of all of this. Shemash sidar adon baruch hu, that which Hashem established. V'heichen liyas mashlam as briyatzai, and He prepared to have the world reach its perfection. Yushlam v'yetzel lepoyel ayidei b'nai ha'adam. That should happen. That should come about through the actions of man. So that they themselves become perfected in the way that is appropriate for them. Okay, so what he's said in this paragraph is that the world can come to this perfection in two ways. It can come to its perfection by our earning it, by our causing it, or it can come to its perfection by Hashem just making it happen. And that's different. That's going to be a different approach. It's going to accomplish differently, and it's not going to end up with the same effect. So our goal is to try to bring about this perfection. Is to try to use all of our abilities to bring the world to a place of perfection, to truly accept Hashem's kingship, to testify of Hashem's oneness, and through that, bring the world to a state of perfection. But it doesn't have to happen that way. It has to happen, but it doesn't have to happen that way. The alternative is that we don't reach that level, we don't bring ourselves and the world to perfection, so Hashem does it for us. But what he's saying here is that if Hashem does it for us, it's not going to be on the same level. That perfection is not going to be complete. It's going to be a lower level of perfection than what would have happened had we accomplished it on our own. Okay?
I have a question. You may have explained this before, but I forgot. How are you defining perfection?
I knew someone was going to ask that.
It's just
Okay, so way in the very beginning of the Sefer,
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, so whenever I don't repeat the question, it's because I'm just giving the explanation, and you don't need the question. So you'll hear. No, I'm very cognizant of that. I'm well aware that people on Zoom can't hear the questions. So whenever I don't repeat the question, it's because I'm just going to explain it. So the question's not necessary.
You think you're talking to Walter's child?
I know nothing. All right, so the way back in the very beginning of the Sefer, we talked about the idea of levels of perfection. So there's perfection, and then there's the perfection of perfection. And perfection doesn't mean the way we understand it that something has reached its pinnacle. Because in reality, there's no such thing as a pinnacle. Hashem is the only pinnacle. Nothing else can ever be the ultimate of perfect, can ever be the perfection of perfection. Now, we can get closer and closer to that. So perfection is not a point, but it's a range. So even within perfection, there are levels. And perfection is a state that can be reached, and then you can grow from there. And you can reach a higher level of perfection. So you can't think of perfection as a singular point, the top, the zenith. It's a whole range called perfection.
And is every individual's journey, we can't be all on the same journey because we're not all starting at the same place, right?
Right, everybody is different in this regard, exactly. Everybody is different. And every neshama, based on its own history, is going to be different as well. You know, what it needs to accomplish, what it already had accomplished, you know, and every lifetime is designed to give that person the opportunity to perfect that neshama with all the different parts and pieces in its unique way that it needs for this lifetime, which is not necessarily going to gain it the ultimate of perfection. But once a person is able to get a neshama to a state of perfection, it's not like that's it, like we've topped off. No, there's no glass ceiling. It continues. And perfection can then be built upon to another level of perfection, which wasn't possible prior to reaching perfection. But once you reach perfection, now there's another level that becomes available. And it continues on. And as we get closer and closer to Hashem, we're getting closer and closer to the ultimate of perfection, which we can never reach. That's impossible, because Hashem is the only ultimate of perfection, but we can continue to grow in that direction and come closer and closer to it. Okay, make sense?
Much clearer.
Okay. All right, yes?
I'm just wondering, so perfection means you're on the right path?
No, perfection does not mean you're on the right path. Perfection means you've reached a state of perfection. You got it
So
right.
it's beyond.
You're where you're at the top of your ability. That's your perfection.
So the first degree of perfection is brought about by you.
The first degree of perfection is brought about by you. Yes.
And then future degrees are what?
And then beyond that, a person is able to continue to grow to a higher level of perfection. Based on either more opportunities that Hashem gives a person, or a whole other lifetime with new opportunities, or a spiritual existence becoming closer to Hashem. Those are all options.
So they're all different degrees of Hashem's help.
Are the different degrees of Hashem's help? I wouldn't describe it that way. I would say these are different degrees that we can reach with Hashem's help. Hashem doesn't give us perfection. We have to earn that perfection. That's what we're talking about right now. That's our job, is we have to reach the perfection. If we don't, and the end of time comes and Hashem says, okay, here's the cutoff, you guys didn't make it, I'm just going to put the world into this perfect state anyway.
So is what you're saying?
That's where we didn't reach the perfection, but we'll get it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is based on our efforts, Hashem will give us freebies and other treats and help based on our efforts.
Will Hashem give us freebies based on our efforts? I'm not really sure I understand that, but yes, if I'm understanding you correctly, then yes. When a person puts in the effort, Hashem gives them a lot more help than if they don't put in the effort. If that's what you mean.
I think so.
Okay, so then yes. But the way a person wants to go is the way he's brought. So when we make the effort, Hashem opens doors. Hashem says, if you just got to open like the pinhead, right? We talked about that earlier in here, right? The eye of the needle. Actually, it's not the eye. That's a mistranslation. It's the chuda. It's the point of the needle, the pinhead. Then I will open it for you like the gates of the Beis Hamikdash, right? So Hashem is saying you got to put in some effort, and then yes, I'll give you all sorts of opportunity and help, and help you along the way. But you got to put in the effort. You have to do that. You have to do the hishtadlus. You have to do your part. You have to do your trying. Then Hashem can help. But if not, if you're just sitting back, waiting, well, then you're not helping. Okay? Good? We all good? Okay. Okay. All right, Dalet. Yine. Chaim. Kvar, be'arnu b'chelik rishon. We've already explained back in the first section. Shehashleimus ha'amiti shel habriya, that the true perfection of creation, hu himashech lo mishleimus yisbarach, that comes from Hashem's own perfection. Because Hashem himself is the only actual perfection. Nevertheless, this too, meaning the process of coming closer to Hashem, which is the source of perfection, that is part of this mitzvah of Shema. Because as we testify of Hashem's oneness, and as we what's the word here? We declare. I don't like that word. All right. When we understand and state that everything is a product of Hashem, everything depends on Hashem. Then Hashem too will become sort of, it's a hard word to translate here. The way he translates it here is Hashem avails himself to us. It's not a literal translation, but I think it's accurate. How do they translate it there?
The same.
Also
Yeah.
avails? Okay. So what it's saying is that when we...
I thought Nidrash means that he'll come after us. Avail means that I'm available, but you got to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Nidrash.
Well, that would be Derech. Nidrash is the recipient.
Oh, okay.
So Hashem becomes sought after by us is kind of the literal translation. But what it means is, I think, like they're saying here in the translations, is that Hashem responds in kind, and that when we put forth this understanding, and we say we understand Hashem is one, we understand that everything that exists is from Hashem, everything that happens, we understand, is Hashem's doing, then Hashem makes that become a more obvious reality to us. So then what will come from that is that the whole world will become perfected through Hashem's connection. And then all of the existences become corrected. The Metzius Amiti Hasharashi in their true sources, Shehu Metzius Yizbarach, which is Hashem himself, as we've explained. So what he's saying is that there's a fairly simple process at work here. That process is that if we recognize that Hashem is the source of everything, then everything becomes, so to speak, sourced by Hashem. Now, of course, it is that way in reality, but it becomes more obvious and it becomes more clear to the world that that's what's going on. So if I associate the hurricane with Hashem, then that hurricane becomes more associated with Hashem. But what do you mean? In reality, of course it's associated with Hashem. Just because I know that doesn't change it. It's associated with Hashem whether I know it or not. But what he's saying is that Hashem makes that more apparent. It makes that, I don't know if that means to others who perhaps aren't so aware, or that means it becomes more clear within my own understanding that I kind of, I understood it, at a level 50, and now Hashem makes it an understanding